Hello everyone. This is a re-recording of a webinar on administering Issutrak that we completed on December the 5th, 2019. My job today, of course, is to go back through some of that content, hopefully give you some information that'll be useful for you. First off, who am I? Well, my name is Mike Wright. I'm a senior product engineer of Issutrak. I have over 20 years experience working with Issutrak. Matter of fact, I predate it. I've been 10 years in support. I've been over 10 years in working with training and configuration with the professional services team. So I'm here to impart some of my knowledge and experience with the product to you today. So, what's some of the first things that I like to do? What do I need to know? So it's the administrator. The administrator needs to know why that site exists. What's the purpose of that site? Sometimes Paul and I, when we're working with customers, the people that we know who are going to be administrators have no idea why the site is there and what the purpose of that site is all about. It could be that it has a site that has been used for a long time. It has its purpose, it's been used very useful, and then all of a sudden we bring a new administrator in and they want to change things. Well, we've got to understand where we're going, where we came from, so we know exactly what effect we're going to have on business going forward. Because we need to know that why that site is important to that business also. Many times what you end up going with is you end up with a site that's important to a business. Sometimes it is crucial to a business operation. And we need to know that, because if we bring that site down for a reason to make changes, then we need to know what that impact on that business is going to be. And so not only do we want to know that importance, we want to know what is this particular site supporting, what type of operations are being supported, what groups are being supported, and what policies and procedures are in place regarding the operation of that site. If it happens to be an auditing site, for example, and you're supporting an auditing purpose, then if you go in and start messing around with that, you could be accessing information that is confidential. You could be accessing information that even has legal ramifications for like HIPAA information. So you need to understand the policies and procedures regarding that particular site and the information it contains. You want to know what documentation exists for the site, and you want to actually create some. If you don't have any, I would recommend creating some documentation that kind of defines the site and the administrator roles in it, because you need to understand those roles, and if they're well documented, then it's easy for you to have transition from one administrator to another. Many times I've run into situations where the administrator that's coming on, they don't have any idea what they're supposed to be doing. So I'm teaching them the software and teaching them what to do, but they don't know how to apply it to everyday business roles. So document the administrator role, document the site, so that when you bring a person on, they can understand the role that they have. So let's kind of start. Administrators in Issutrak. There are different types of administrators, and basically they're going to be kind of two separate. They're going to be agent user administrators, and they're going to be user administrators. So what does that really mean? Well, in Issutrak, there are two types of users in our support model. An agent user consumes a license, and they have permissions that are specific to the agent user. And then you have a user record that's not an agent. There are some administrative functions that you can grant to non-agent users. So we're going to talk about those also today. But let's talk with the main two users we're going to discuss in this entire session: the system administrator and the site administrator. Now, what is the system administrator? They have full access and ability to add, remove, and change system functions. They can go in and change anything in the site. They can change it. They can go into the back side of Issutrak. They have access to a specific menu called the System Administration menu, and they can add features, remove features, change default values. They can go in and update change records. They can go in and see any issue in the site. They have full access and control. Now, Site Administrator is kind of a step down from that. They can go in and change system functions, and they can go in and change users, but they can't add or remove features from the software. And in some cases, their role could be restricted by the need to be a system administrator. So you have to understand what they do. So let's go over to this IT training site and kind of show you a little bit. First thing, when you're logged in as an administrator, you're going to see the administration menu, but both site admins and system admins see that. Now, if you happen to be logged in as a system administrator, you also get this little gear icon on the far right-hand side. That's the indicator that Paul and I look for to know we're logged in with an system administrator. because in the system administrator, we get an additional menu that we can control things. So for example, if I log into an administration menu, I get this whole laundry list on the left-hand side of capabilities and features that have been enabled in Issutrak. Now, this list will change according to your particular site. Some of you may not have some features turned on. For example, the task functionality is optional. So is substatus. So is service level agreements. These are optional. They're not going to be on every site. So how does that get changed? Well, when I click on the system administrator permissions, then a left-hand submenu is going to open up underneath system colors. And it's going to give you ability to go in and make modifications and changes to default settings. Now, I kind of look at this as being in two different areas. System defaults to password policies actually turn on default settings. Settings in here like, how the display name is going to be done, what's your time frame, how do you want the site to be defined as, how's the email going to work. Those are defaults. Features to add down here to security are options. Options that are turned on or turned off within the site. In order to turn a feature on, you have to go into optional fields and turn on tasks, for example. If you want to use attachments, you have to go in features and turn on those particular capabilities. System administrators do that. Once the feature is enabled, the site administrator can go in and change the individual settings that are definitely going to be effective. For example, they're going to add the task. They're going to add the values for the substatuses. They're going to go in and add the rules for the service level agreements. So the system administrator turns them on. The site administrator does the work. Is really what it comes down to. So let's just go through this really quickly. System defaults is a whole page of default settings for Issutrak. It controls a lot of different options within here. Now, whenever you're going through a site like this, you may have questions. If you ever have questions, then you can go over here to the right-hand side and click on this little circle with a question mark. When you click that, it should open up another tab on your browser, just like this one is doing. And the tab on the browser is going to open up a Help Center document that will describe the different features that are contained on this particular page. Sometimes if you need additional information, you can use the search capability to look for additional information that may be on other articles related to that particular feature. So you may want to read in both places and see what's going on. But it's a good way for administrators and system administrators and site administrators to get information when they're unsure or when they're new. Your next step is to call support. That's the next thing you would do if you have a question. So we'll go ahead and we will close that particular tab and we'll continue our little discussion here. Now you have site appearance items. Site appearance items give you the capability of going in and changing some of the home screen messages, changing titles, even adding in your logo settings in here. Mobile settings have the ability to change our mobile pages that we render to you. Remember, this is not an app, but a mobile page. So you can either show or not show some features, and you can change the order that they appear on the web pages once they're enabled. You can modify or change our default outbound email settings. And they also have access to view the outbound email log. So again, that's system administrator. When your password policy needs to be enabled, the system administrator sets the policy, and they will tell you whether they can go ahead and do self-service password reset. Not only do you have to activate it here, but the individual user must also be given permission to change passwords. You have to have it in two places. But this is where the policy is set. So these are all default settings. Then you get to things like features. As I mentioned before, features page is where it begins. It begins where I'm turning features on. For example, asset management is a module that is purchased through Issutrak. So it is an additional cost. And when it's enabled, then you get this module capability at the top to turn on additional capabilities in Issutrak. Attachments must be turned on. This is where your auditing is enabled. So it's a lot of different features that can be used to both manage Issutrak and to work with Issutrak according to the need. Some sites then can be configured to be very simple and narrow. Some sites can be very broad and have multiple usages. So that's why it's very difficult to talk in specifics in this particular type of webinar. You need to go ahead and talk to Paul individually, or talk to your sales engineer or your current administrator to get an understanding of what's going on in that particular site, because features will change from installation to installation. Even if you're moving from company to company, you think you know Issutrak, but then you get into Issutrak and it's being used in an entirely different way with an entirely different set of features. So become familiar with what's enabled and what's not enabled. Optional fields, again, features that are enabled, such as next action or required by date. This is where your tasks are turned on. User-defined fields. Now, this is the one that really is important, because what happens is this is where you get your flexibility within Issutrak. You're adding additional fields that are not currently configured in the default fields of Issutrak. So if you want to expand usage, and I'm going to go over this again a little bit later, if you're expanding usage, you need to have additional fields that are related to that new usage. You go to user-defined fields. You have to be a system administrator in order to add those fields to the site. Additional items at the bottom, menu options, where you're adding an administrative item to actually go in and say a link to a report. For example, here on the left-hand side, this is a link out to MSN. Essentially, I've added it in as a link. It's a clickable link. If I click on it, MSN will open up. On the left-hand side, the security options that are, and they're included within Issutrak, that are not included in the default, but there are additional security options that can be made. System administrators make the decision to enable those features or not. Again, it's up to you. And then if they want to see the results of our admin auditing capability, then you can go in here and look underneath the log files and see the log files of changes to user records, changes to administration menus, and to system administration menus. So it gives you additional capabilities of looking at it, but that's optional. It does not need to be turned on unless you wish to. So that's system administrators. Site administrators would have options here. So they would not be going into the system settings. They're mostly going to be looking through organizations, locations, departments. They'll be setting up user profiles. They'll be working on the business rules, mostly just the administration menu here on the left. So that'll be the day-to-day operations. So when we're looking at them, the system administrators can make changes to the site with system settings. The system administrators can go in and make changes to enable functions in the administration menu. They can add, edit, and deactivate users and groups, and have full access to view and update all issues. They have the permission or parameter has system administrator. This parameter cannot be granted to a user unless it's by another system administrator. So if you, a lot of times people have a default user created as a system administrator and they log in. They'll go ahead and do some work, and they'll decide they want to go ahead and log out, and they may have taken off that system administrator permission. Well, you can't go in and create another one unless you go in there and you add a second parameter. So be very careful. Remember, you always have to be a system administrator in order to do a lot of work on the backside. The site administrators, as I was just showing you, is that permissions or menu for the administration section. They have the agent permission, can access and maintain administration functions. They can make changes to enable functions within the site. So things that system administrator turned on, they can make changes to those particular things. Adding service level agreements. They can put in business rules. They can add users. They can create groups. So they can add and edit, deactivate users and groups. They can have access and to view all issues in Issutrak, just like a system administrator can. Site administrators, excuse me, and system administrators have access to everything. Okay? Forgive me. So, let's talk next. What can a site administrator do? So let's kind of start here a little bit about what they do. Okay, so site administrators, what can they do? They can update the hours of operation and the system colors. So they can go in and make changes to the hours of operation. For example, if we decide we want to start closing at 6 p.m. instead of 5 p.m., then we want to change our hours of operation to reflect that. If we have got a new marketing group that's come along, and they've decided to change our colors from our blue and beautiful gold and white and make it green and pukey yellow. Well, then they can do that. So they can go in and make changes to the particular site settings that we have. If they want to get into the administration menus, then they can change the organizations, locations, departments, users, and groups. And remember, locations and departments are going to be optional. Not all sites have them. But these are basic building blocks within Issutrak. They're the basics for every user. A user is going to have an organization. Sometimes they'll have an organization and a department membership. The user then, a lot of times, will need to be created, and they'll belong to a group to grant them permissions. So it's very important for them to understand how these particular features within Issutrak work and what their purpose is and what their goals are. Another thing that they can do is they can create business roles. They can create classes, which are optional. Custom screens, which is the screens that you're going to be inputting data into. They can go into the email notifications and change the notification rules that we set up. They can remove image files that have been orphaned when we've deleted issues or notes. And they can modify or update or even change the incoming email module and its default values. They can go in and work and view the issue audits. They can add or edit issue types that exist. They can do a mass update feature, which means they can change an assignment from one user to another user by adding a query and running the query against the database table and then changing multiple issues at one time. They can create, add, and edit quick picks, which are our pre-filled issues. And of course, they can add and create recurring issues, which would be an issue that recurs on schedule. So every year, every month, every day. In addition to that, they can modify and change our service level agreements. And that doesn't apply to all cases, but service level agreements a lot of times support our ability to support other customers. They can put in pre-filled solutions. They can add in special tables. Now, the special table is not used very often. It's used in certain situations to put in things like customer information, or it could be in parts. It's pretty much anything, but it's a special situation. Don't worry too much about it if you don't have it enabled. Talk to one of our support team or one of our PS team members before looking into that very deep. Substatus, of course, we use that a lot. It's the status of an issue beyond being open and closed. So therefore, we're going to use that probably in most all installations. And our task or workflow process. That's where we'll be adding values to our task and workflow capability within Issutrak, hoping to give you great information, great capability to use this for monitoring processes within your site. Now, there's also a particular user called an organizational user administrator. They have the permission, can access and maintain users in the user's organization and its additional organizations. That means that they can go in and add users for a customer. So they belong to a customer organization and they want to add their users. They want to change and remove users as necessary. So we give them that capability. They can only change information, change users and add users within their organization they belong to and any additional organization they support. For example, if a company has company A as a subsidiary, then company A can go in and make a modification to company B, which is a subsidiary of A. So they have that capability. They can update, add, but they cannot delete users in that organization. We do not extend that capability to them. They can go in then and add users to groups, which then gives the users permissions. We do not give them the ability to update or add groups, nor change permissions in groups. They cannot change permissions in individual user accounts. They can only add the users to the groups to grant permissions. So the ability for you to change permissions is limited by the parent company that owns the site. They create the groups, they set the groups that need to be set up and give them the permissions. And then the organization administrator can only add the users to the groups. It helps protect the parent organization from allowing a person who's an organization administrator to granting too much power or rights to a user at their company, but still gives them that local capability to add users as needed. Another one that's a little bit different is called a read-only administrator. Now, read-only administrator is a little bit different. They have full access to Issutrak as far as the issues are concerned, but they don't have any capability of making modifications or changes to the permissions and things they see. So let's take a look here. I'm going to go here into this IT training site, and I'm going to pick on a particular user. So I'm going to go down here into the administration section, and I'm going to go to users. And there's a user in here called Ashley. So I'm going to go ahead and do a list all. And I'm going to find Ashlyn. And here she is. And I'm going to edit her account. And she belongs to an organization called PSA. And I am going to make her what's called an organizational administrator. So I'm going to give her allow read-only access to administrative information. And I'm going to do an update. Now, I'm going to bring up another browser. And I'm actually logged in as Ashlyn. So here, you'll see there's Ashlyn. And her name is over here at the top. I can get this little window out of the way. And then, so Ashlyn is logged in. And you see that she has access here. So I can go in here, and she doesn't have any administration menu options at all. She can only go submission, things like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to log her out. So I'll click on the log out. We'll put her back in here. And I'm going to log in as her. Now that's going to reset her parameters. So it's going to reset her account. Now you'll notice she has administration capabilities. So let's go to the organization records. If I go to the organizations and I click on edit, which says, wait a minute, she can edit. Yes, you can. So she could go in and put whatever she wants in here, but look at the top. There's no update. She can't make a change here. If I go to the user list and I want to go to list all, look, there's no update, no edit capability. So she can see, but she can't change. Now I'm going to click back to home, and I'm going to go to the dashboard, and I'm going to pick on some of the issues that are on this dashboard. Hopefully I've got them open in here. So I'm going to go to dashboard settings. I'm going to add a quick little item in here called the issue types. And I'm going to add that to the left column. So I'm adding a panel. And in this particular case, we're going to take a look at a couple of issues in here from the activity log. The activity log then is some issues that Ashlyn is not a member of. She didn't submit these issues. She's not assigned to these issues. She has no access to the issue. Take a look though what she can do. She can go in here and she can add a note to that issue. She can, if she can edit. Also, she will be able to edit this issue and make modifications. So she can go in there and put notes in here she needs to. So be very careful. This particular user can access any issue. This particular user can make notes. They can see the data. So be careful with that permission if you do decide to use it. I don't have many people using the permission, but it is there. It can be granted to users. It can give them access. If it does, it gives them access to all issues. So be aware of that. Okay? So let's go ahead then and continue with our little discussion today. So I'll go ahead and get rid of this one, and we'll go back here. And I did it. There we go. Wrong one. So our read-only administrators, they can go in, they can update any administration. They cannot update any administration menus. They can view enable functions in the administration menu. They can view users and groups, and they have full access to view and update all issue records. So be careful. It also depends on what permissions they have. Like I said, if they don't have can edit, they're not going to edit everything. Then we have what's called a module administrator. A module administrator means that this particular user has been granted access to administrate a particular module. For example, they have a billing module administrator can access and maintain billing module functions. Now, so let's take a look at that very quickly. We go into modules, we have billing. Now, a lot of you don't have the billing module. So, but this is where you're adding a product and service or a billing line item to each individual issue. So we can have multiple line items added to an issue. So one of the few places you can do one-to-many relationships on an issue. Some of our service companies do this, where they're doing like after-hours rates that they're adding, or they're doing things like putting in IT equipment or materials or mileage, and they want to add those to the issues. They're performing a service. So this user has the ability to add and update those service records. They can even export and create invoices for those particular records if needed. So that's the administrator there. Here on this one, the asset management. They can access and maintain the asset management functions within Issutrak. So here, this particular user, I'm going to close this thing and get it out of my way. They can go in here and go into the asset management module. Now, the asset management module, again, is designed to allow you to create assets. And those assets could be anything. But for example, for this one, we can go in and create a particular PC record. We can take a look at that record. This particular manager could go in then and modify and change these records, add new records, view the information, see the issues that were related to them or the items that were related, view information related to that asset and modify it. So in addition to that, you'll have the survey module. So some cases, our customer will have a survey module, and they'll go to the survey modules and they'll be able to add surveys to the site. So they can go in and add or work with surveys, create new surveys, and see the results of those surveys. So here's a survey that's created. Well, on this one, there's different ones in here. Just see here, we can see the results of this particular survey here. And you'll see that there's questions that have been asked and then results that have been granted. So they can see both the survey and the results of the survey. And I'll go back to Issutrak here. And then down at the bottom, projects. There's a project feature within Issutrak. And the project feature, if they have that capability, is accessed off the home menu. And then they can go in and add new projects. They can access and maintain the issues related to the projects. They can go in and see a lot of the data related to those projects. So it gives them access to not only the project records that are set up and being used, but it also gives them access to the issues also. So be aware of that. Some cases that can break some exclusion capabilities within Issutrak, but that is the way the feature works. If you have that particular administration capability, you will be able to see the issues related to those projects. Now, let's take a look again. So administrators and system admins applying their capabilities. So what are we looking at? Managing users and groups. Now that means that they can go in and update users, they can create groups, they can remove permissions, add permissions. Now I did a whole webinar on users and groups, so I'm not going to go into detail with that. I'm just going to go over it very quickly with that. Also adding new usages to Issutrak. Sometimes we'll get a call where a customer wants to add a new usage. They want to bring on another usage into the site. They want to know how to do it. Well, the system administrator and the site administrator would be the ones who's actually doing the work. They'll be planning it, they'll be executing, and they'll be doing it. I'll go over that very quickly to show you how that's done. Managing email. Support gets calls all the time about email, both incoming and outbound. It's the job of the administrators to work with us or to figure out what the problems are or how to address those particular problems. Sometimes it's setup, sometimes it's technical. It's some of the things that has to be done. Creating and managing reports. Unfortunately, administrators become the subject matter experts of Issutrak. So when people want information out of Issutrak, they usually will come to the administrators to say, okay, I need a report showing X or Y. I need this particular report to run on certain situations. And it's up to the system administrators to either assist them with creating a report, teach them how to create a report, or to do it for them. And then if they wanted schedule, to go ahead and create that schedule and send it out by email so it'll arrive in their mailboxes whenever they want it to be. And then finally, of course, their first and main priority in Issutrak is making sure the issues are being handled properly. Sometimes that's handled over to other users, but a lot of times it is the role of the site administrator and to go ahead and manage those particular issues. And many times the site administrator and the system administrator are the same person, so therefore your role still exists. So let's look at a little of these individually. Managing users and groups. So what does that infer? Adding users, manually, cloning them, Managing the users as they come over from Active Directory, changing them from end users to agents, for example, giving them agent group memberships so they can have permissions to do their daily jobs, updating group memberships, adding groups, modifying permissions, updating memberships, making sure people are in the right places, removing people when they leave. So those are things that you'll do, and you'll do that by accessing the administration menu and making those changes. So just so you remember, it's on administration, users, and groups. So this is where you go in and make modifications to the user records or go in and make modification to the group records. It'll all be done in those sections. Now, the next thing we'll look at is adding a new usage. So what do you want to do when you want to add a new usage? First thing I look at is the issue type. I want to identify the title for that issue type because it's going to help me focus on what I'm trying to do. And it could be one or more issue types that are being needed in order to do whatever type of usage you're looking for. Now, the next thing that I want to do is the data. What type of data do I need to gather to support this issue type and this usage? Sometimes, again, it's one form, sometimes it's multiple forms. You want to kind of lay it out, kind of maybe draw it up on a piece of paper, of course, put it on a napkin, whatever you want to do. But that'll help you define not only the fields that are existing, but fields that may need to be added to the site in order to get that information that you need for that particular type of usage. So that gives you an idea of what to draw out and how it's going to look. Now, that's going to go ahead and give you the user-defined fields that you need to add in order to build that particular custom screen. Then you'll make a decision. Do I need a quick pick? Do I not need a quick pick? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And if I am going to use a quick pick, is the quick pick going to need to launch a task process? So I'm going to add a task process to that quick pick so that when I submit the issue through a quick pick, it's going to add the workflow component to the issue. So let's go and take a little bit of a tour on this one. So here's the things that we're looking at. Number one, issue type. So when we start looking at the issue type in this particular site, you'll see that there are tons of issue types and a lot of them have custom screens associated. For example, here's a finance issue. Here's the custom screen for the finance issue that I'm looking at. And this is the submit page. So it has user-defined fields for customer name, customer phone, email address, customer addresses in here. There may be other fields in here, and it could be any information that you need. The idea, though, is once you know that, then you have to go over here to the system settings area and add those fields to the site. Now, most of those are text fields that we just saw. So I'm going to go to system settings, and forgive me for moving around a little bit. And I go user-defined fields. And if I look down here, customer address, email address, name, phone, all of those have been added as user-defined fields. Once those are added, then I can go over here and pick on the custom screens. So I click on the custom screens. And again, I'll go to finance. So I'm picking on finances. I'll edit. And then I'll probably clone an existing custom screen and use that as my basics, and then add the fields that I need, which were customer name, phone, email, and address. Bring those over, drag them in, and build a custom screen. Then I'll assign that custom screen here on the left underneath Assign. I'll decide that's going to be the finance. And then I am going to look down and see that it's been added to the finance issue type. At that point, I'm ready to put an issue in. So in that, once I start putting the issue in, then I'll decide, well, is there anything I need for the quick pick? So then I'll go down to the quick pick and decide whether I need a quick pick. So I might have a finance issue in here. Let's see. Here's the settlements right here. So here's the settlements in retail. We look at that and we'll say, okay, here's the field. Here's everything we need. Does it have a process? Looks like it does. So therefore, we'll go ahead and have a process order added in here also. So we'll need to build the process underneath our administration section. And we get down to the bottom here. Of course, this one doesn't want to go down, but it's the task at the bottom, and we'll add it in. So in that case, we have all the pieces that we've had to work through, but we had to define all of that before we even got started. And I keep clicking the wrong thing here. So Now that we've gotten through this section, then we're going to come down and take a look at other options that we need. So I'm going to try to skip a little bit down here and see where I am. And right where I needed to be, adding a new usage. Get down to a little smaller screen here, and then I'll continue back through here. So forgive me. Once we've added that new usage, then we can go ahead and move through. And we're going to be managing email. When we're managing email, again, we're looking about outbound and inbound email. So you never know exactly where you're going to be needing to managing it. Again, outbound email is underneath system settings. So you have to go to administration, system settings, and things you're looking back here is most about control, about connection information. So in email settings, we're looking at both of the settings that are having to do with the connection for that particular mailbox, making sure the password has been set correctly or hasn't been changed. And then also on the left-hand side, we'll be looking at the log file to take a look at the outbound emails, making sure they're processing properly. On the incoming side, it's a little the same, except here you can be a site administrator in order to access that. That's incoming email is incoming. You'll go to the mailbox that you happen to be using. And then again, you'll look for the most part at connection information. Make sure, again, passwords have not changed or any of that. Make sure that we still have access to the servers by testing our connections, making sure that all the settings are still set appropriately. Other things that you'll be doing is looking at the outbound email, the incoming email log to make sure it's processing in the proper manners. Make sure that you've got processing on both those received and both processed. Make sure that you're not getting any retry information that's incorrect. Making sure that all the data is correct there. And then, of course, going to our interacting with our support team to ensure all the information is correct. Next thing that we'll be doing. You may be looking at tokens for emails, keywords, exclusion text, blocks text, things like that. So you'll have access to all of those on the left-hand side. Adding new tokens, making sure they're working properly. Adding in keywords, so if you happen to have a new keyword you need to put in, so you're getting email from a particular address you no longer want to receive it from, to put in your block here. If you happen to have an exclusion text, which means the signature line has those legalese information at the bottom, then you would want to copy those and paste them to the bottom so they'll be excluded from coming in through incoming email. And of course, blocking attachments. Normally you'll block your attachments on an individual issue basis and not do it here, but you can do it in either place if you need to. And then of course, again, viewing the incoming email log to ensure that you are getting all the correct information and everything's processing appropriately. So what's next? We're going to manage a little email. We're going to create reports. So we're going to assist in creating saved searches and reports, using for building queries and reports using a report writer tool, creating and working with saved searches, and then of course managing and sharing reports with others. Now again, that's going to be something that I'm going to do on a deep dive in a later session. So you'll see that on a webinar coming up soon. I may even do that on the one in January. I think that'll be a good deep dive, is managing and creating reports. So we'll take a look at that one in that particular webinar that's coming up. So the next thing that we'll take a look at is managing issues. Of course, in managing issues, you're doing things like working through the dashboards, as you see me demonstrate in here, adding in additional items, managing the service level agreement rules, making sure they're following up correct. So a lot of this has to do with what tools are you implementing in Issutrak to manage your issues. They're the ones that are monitoring your compliance to some of the policies and procedures you have in operating the issues, making sure the issues are following the policies, they're being closed on time, they're being handled appropriately, being followed up, they're not just sitting out there. Looking at tools within Issutrak to help you do that. Using recurring issues as a tool to make sure that things don't slip through the cracks when they're like reports or reports that need to be run in a certain amount of time. Managing and reviewing your audit records, making sure that people are doing things like they should be and not just passing the buck from one place to another. Creating the auto assignments as business rules change or business. Creating that whole set of tools and then working with those tools and to make sure that Issutrak is doing the best for your business to help you automate and manage that particular set of issues that are so important for your day-to-day operations. So those are the things that you'll do as an administrator within Issutrak. So a couple final thoughts. First off, again, get a good understanding of the site. Get an understanding of the tools you're going to use to manage those issues is also a very good thing to do, and putting good notes together and good understanding of how those tools are going to be applied to that site. It's your job to manage it as an administrator. Again, if you need help and assistance, you turn again to the support team, or you turn again to Paul and myself as the PS people to help you with individual questions related to your individual usage of Issutrak. As I said, Issutrak is a very, very useful tool. It can be set up very simply or very complex. It can be used in many industries and be done for many things. So it's very difficult to go through a system administrator training like this without trying to get into the weeds of your individual usages, because the information that I'm imparting can be very different from one usage to another because of how we're trying to apply the particular features to Issutrak. So contact us and talk to us whenever you need to, and then hopefully we can help you out. So with that, I'm going to end this particular talk and give you a little time to breathe. So y'all have a great day. This is Mike Wright. Goodbye.